All right, we are live. Austin, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, super psyched to have you on. Now, you're working over at the Solana Foundation, and so you can watching kind of with a pretty good observation point as to what has recently happened with Helium, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal for a number of reasons. I mean, I think a lot of people think of me as someone who's like, oh, I'm really immersed in the Solana community. And actually, Helium, I joined about a year before I joined the Solana community. I was running, I think I launched Node like 730 or something like that in
Nice.
Williamsburg in Brooklyn, where I live, like way back in the day. So
Yeah,
I met the original team at Helium at one of the like meetups they did in New York that had like 40 people there back in the day when it was just a tiny little
back in the
project.
day.
So it's really cool to see kind of these two worlds melding together with Helium migrating to Solana.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're one of the OG Helium guys. I heard that you used to complain in Slack about Helium sucking and not earning, and now here we are in Solana, and it's crushing. So we've come a
Oh
long way.
yeah.
It's cool to see it.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
I mean, back in the day, it was one of those things where like, the documentation on proof of coverage was just so poor that you'd be like, why are these numbers totally different from like things around you? And there's reasons behind it, right? It's all like there's complicated math that governs it, but it was super hard to understand. So I was definitely one of those people who bought like 6 different antennas, like had a whole like testing regime to figure out like what was the best antenna I could get based on where I was and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. It was a good way to spend
yeah,
COVID.
yeah, right. So that was then. Let's catch up to now. What's new on Solana? What's going on there?
So many things. I mean, one of the really cool pieces about the Solana network is it's an active development network. And I think most networks can, except Bitcoin, can really claim that there is some form of active development going on. But the pace of innovation on Solana is way faster than you see on really any other network out there. And so that means in the last 12 months, local fee markets have shipped. The network has changed its networking technology entirely from raw UDP to Quick, and stake-weighted QoS has come into play, and state compression. And these are all four technologies that are fairly complicated, but at the end of the day, what they mean is that you can do way more than you used to be able to on Solana with much higher resiliency, and you can do it for much cheaper. And so state compression is one of those pieces that Helium was using during their migration. They still use to this day. But if
Yeah,
you think about it, Helium's got over 1 million nodes in the system, right? From the low raw WAN network to the 5G network. Like there's a lot of state, and we mean state literally like account state that had to be moved into a new blockchain when they were migrating. And so using state compression on Solana, the engineers there were able to basically migrate the whole thing over in a very short amount of time, and create a system where you can actually like get payouts as often as you want by going in and claiming them from a transaction standpoint. And the cost of that is $0.00025. And the old blockchain that Helium was on, the Erlang based system, it was real. It's like a microwave, right? Like a
right,
microwave is really good at one thing, two things: generating microwaves and counting down timers, and it can't do anything else, right?
right.
And so when Helium was needing to migrate to another blockchain, it was one of those things where it's like everything else had a whole big set of compromises to it. They could have created their own like side
Yep.
chain on something. They could have built their own L2. They could have like done a Cosmos thing. But at the end of the day, they were either going to be off on an island, which is where Helium was before on their Erlang system, or they were
Yep.
going to be subject to a severe number of technical limitations that would mean the way Helium worked would have to change.
Yep.
And so, Solana just happened to be a really great network to meet the needs that the team there was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, there's always people who are like, you should have done this, or you should have done my chain, or whatever. I was like, they picked one
Sure.
Solana. It's working so far. I think one of the immediately amazing things that I saw as a standard casual user, is that just everything is so fast now. And I think that was like one of the
Yeah.
big things. Like, dude, this transaction went in. It's done already.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the oh shit moment for folks when they first use Solana is always the speed. It's always like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I don't have to wait for confirmations. My trade is done. It's settled.
Yeah.
It's the finality's been reached. It's only been 400 milliseconds. And
Yeah.
that is just such a different world from, Ethereum or Bitcoin, or, even the Erlang days on Ethereum, where you'd send some Ethereum into an exchange and you'd be like, all right, time to go make some coffee. and
Yeah. Some coffee,
then
like
we'll
make
come
some
back and
bread.
do it.
You come back in
Make
an
some
hour.
bread.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the speed thing is rad. And then you guys are constantly kind of improving that. It's not like someone just built Solana and walked away. I'm seeing,
Yeah.
Max and I are seeing a bunch of stuff on Twitter about Fire Dancer. Pretty clearly, it's not about the fire dancers with fire and dancing. What is that? And can you explain kind of what that means for the lay audience?
Yeah. So sort of to start at the first part of your thing there, I think everyone understands that Bitcoin is never getting faster. Bitcoin is designed to be exactly what it is. It's designed, like the algorithm literally modulates how difficult the math is in proof of work. So it can always do the same thing at the same speed. And that means that as computers get more powerful, Bitcoin gets more difficult, right? Like this is the core function of how a proof of work system works. As computers get faster, Solana gets faster. And this is a really big change from the way other blockchains are built. Most blockchain architectures are limited by software innovations. Solana is limited by hardware. And hardware is something that we can go back all the way to 1960 and we can say roughly every 18 months, things get twice as fast. And yes, there's a lot of granularity that goes into how they get twice as fast. Sometimes it's GPUs are getting faster than CPUs for a few years, and then we see these things change. But fundamentally, Solana is able to drift off of the billions of dollars that AMD and Intel and Nvidia and Apple and all these companies are investing in making better and better hardware. To become faster, even if there was no software innovation taking place. And on top of that, there's a whole team at both Solana Labs and other core engineering groups, and now Jump Crypto building Fire Dancer that are trying to make the network even faster. And so there's this sort of idea in some other worlds where it's good to be slow, right? If you talk to folks in the Ethereum community, they will say slow is good. Like we don't actually want Ethereum to get any faster. We think that like the moneyness of Ethereum, and basically it's all economic arguments at the end of the day. And
Right.
the economic arguments are interesting, but the things that really matter for usability for 99.9% of the world's population is it fast and is it cheap and can I trust it? And that's really what the
Right.
focus is at the Solana Foundation. And now FireDancer is a new validator client coming for the Solana network, which is great because having multiple validator client implementations makes the network more secure. But on top of that, FireDancer is a rewrite from the ground up. It's sort of like that old thing about like, if you don't start building your house with a floor plan, it's going to be a disaster of a construction project. And, Solana is now 3 years old in the terms of its time on mainnet. And the fundamental architecture, as we were talking about, lots of it has changed dramatically. And so, the same way that like if you go see like an old house in Europe, it's, lots of additions hobbled together, one room to another, things look totally different. FireDancer is basically saying if we could start from scratch and we know the architecture that Solana is today, we could make it 100 times faster. And they're correct, right? And so the work that's being done right now, and I'm going to go plug my own podcast here, but we have an episode of Validated dropping next week with Kevin Bowers, who's the chief scientist for research and development at Jump, and he's the lead architect of FireDancer. And the way he describes high performance computing is just such a departure from how most people think about how to make software systems fast. And
super exciting.
It's really exciting. And like the work that he has been doing for years there, trying to make the world's fastest trading system, they're taking all of that expertise and they're bringing it to make the world's fastest blockchain. And even using stock off-the-shelf hardware, they're seeing anywhere from 10 to 100x performance increases on the exact same validators folks are running today. And this is like early stages of the projects. They're not even close to done with the thing yet. We probably won't see it on mainnet till 2024. But like, again, looking through this process, like what we're really seeing is like the scalability of Solana is already 10x what anything else in the industry is. And we're looking at another 10x coming above that.
Yep. You guys just mashing on the gas. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, if speed is the one of the big advantages, then making sure that you stay ahead of that. Let's see. So the other big news, we got 1 million NFTs from Helium coming on Solana. That was a big deal. The transition was a big deal. You guys also in the hardware biz. What's going on with this Saga phone?
Yeah, I mean, in the hardware biz is a big statement. I think Helium is far more in the hardware biz with decentralized physical infrastructure than the Solana Labs is. But Solana Mobile is this sort of new upstart project out of Solana Labs that's focused on building a software stack for a phone. And the point of the software stack is it's fully open source, and it makes it possible to have self-custody securely on a mobile device. This is not quite as secure as a Ledger hardware wallet, but it's very close to in terms of embedding a hardware wallet into a phone. It's probably 100,000 times safer than any software wallet that exists on the market. And a software wallet, like if you're a Helium user, you should really be storing Helium on a hardware wallet. The software wallet Helium makes is awesome, but at the end of the day, software can have vulnerabilities, and you give it enough timeline, there will be some vulnerability there. And so hardware wallets are really the gold standard for how you should store your crypto. And they're very user friendly to use nowadays. And so, the whole point of the Solana mobile stack is to say, we think there's an alternative to the Google and Apple duopoly. We think that Web3 is a big enough selling feature that companies are going to want to enable Solana support on their phones because they're going to sell more phones. If you're in the $200, $300 smartphone market in India, this is a very competitive market. And if you can eke 2% more sales by saying we've added Solana support, it's millions of dollars extra revenue for these companies. And so our hope here is that OEMs start really adopting it. But this is new. This is weird, right? The same way that in the early days, Helium, the company, built all their hotspots themselves, and now they don't manufacture any of them themselves. We needed to, work with Solana Labs and build a phone to show people that like this software stack is real, it's competitive, and folks are willing to buy a phone just because it has Helium and Solana integrations on it. And the cool part is this phone will also, like almost any phone, will support the Helium 5G and LTE wireless networks as well. So it's really cool to say like, oh, I can actually store my Helium data network credits on the secure element inside of my phone and use that to pay for my phone service. Like that is just a wild and crazy cool world we're living in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the whole thing is just becoming cooler and cooler the deeper we go. And I think we all should have this expectation that as we go, things are going to break and stuff's not going to work. But eventually we're going to get to a point that is far better than where we are today. And that's certainly why I'm sticking around. Let's see. So for the last cool. Last couple minutes, let's hit this idea that I haven't seen, and maybe you've got it. There's no killer app for Helium on Solana yet. On-chain Pokemon Go. Kind of cool, but I wouldn't call that the killer thing. What are some cool things that, let's say, like non-crypto native people can do on Solana who are coming from Helium, who kind of got their entry into crypto through Helium? And now
so I would actually argue the killer app built on Helium on Solana is Hivemapper. And so Hivemapper, right, is running, so it's a distributed global Street View, Google Street View sort of protocol. And so there's cameras that you can go buy the same way you could go buy a Helium hotspot, and you can put in your car and it will map and take photos as you go. And that would not be really possible without Helium, right? So GPS spoofing, as the Helium community OGs know, is a very serious problem and a very real thing. And so Hivemapper has actually embedded a LoRa chip into these dash cams, so that they can reference the GPS with also what all these hotspots are actually reporting and seeing. And we know hotspot location data is not like perfect. It's probably, a 50-meter radius, but that's enough to say we are certain this car is actually in this location. And this is not someone spoofing GPS and just uploading photos like from the internet and trying to earn like Hivemapper tokens. And so, as an infrastructure layer protocol, which is the way I view Helium, it's not really like a user-facing protocol in that sense.
Okay.
My cat is chasing a fly, so
well, they get active every so often. You got to take care of these things. Oh, look at that.
So I think like Helium, it's a real application layer protocol, and what that means is like I don't think anyone has a positive, great feeling about T-Mobile, right? Or Verizon or AT&T or any of their cell carriers or ISPs. But we know we need ISPs to access the internet, which all of us would like to do. I think Helium's kind of the same way. It's like that community of folks who has built Helium, we're not normal, right? We are not the expectation that a normal consumer is going to be like, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bolt a radio onto the side of my house. Right. Most spouses are probably not cool with you bolting a radio to the side of your house. Right. That's not like the standard we should expect for everyone in the country to do. But when people start looking at things like Helium Mobile and say, wait a minute, I can get coverage that is not stealing my data and is actually very competitively cheap. And like it changes the economic relationship between people and their infrastructure. And so I don't know if we're going to get a killer application for Helium any more than
Yep.
there's a killer application for the centralized wireless industry, right? I don't think we'd say the iPhone is the killer feature of Verizon. Like that would be a weird way to think about what the iPhone is, right? But the iPhone would not be possible, would not be what it is today without the terrestrial centralized wireless providers. And so I don't know what we're going to see built on Helium. I think we're going to see a mix of things like Hivemapper. We're going to see flood sensors. We're going to see much higher quality environmental data and markets for that, and smart grids that are no longer running on like cell phones. You have to pay $15 a month to like embed in like the sensor. That whole world is going to be, I think, it's going to be a slowly and then all at once moment. And there's going to be no killer feature. It's just going to become the new standard.
Yeah. We're talking to Ariel later today on the same show. So I'll tell him you said that he's got the killer app. I'm sure he'll be psyched on that.
Yeah.
So ripping, dude. Well, I think that that's probably the time that we got. I know you're super busy. Thanks ton for coming on. I would love to have you back on pretty soon to get the next set of updates. This whole system is moving so quickly. It's really cool to see what you guys are doing and just kind of stay up to date on what's going on.
Yeah, certainly. Would love to.
So ripping, we will see you next time.